Ladies and gentlemen, time is running and we can start. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ewa Zięba and it's my great honor to welcome you to Knowledge Management Conference. We are at the University of Economics in Katowice. This university is the oldest university in the Silesia region, and our university is one of the top economics universities in Poland. We come together to share our research experiences and learn about those experiences from one another. In the next couple of days, we will be addressing the issues of knowledge management, learning, and information technology. Why are knowledge management, learning, and information technology worth to explore? Firstly, knowledge on a par with material and financial resources is a crucial resource for the development of economy, business, society, and above all, personal development. Secondly, knowledge is a result of learning process. Learning in schools, learning by doing, self-learning, lifelong learning. And thirdly, the aim of information technology is to support knowledge management and learning. Therefore, at this conference, we will discuss how knowledge management, learning, and information technology can be used by enterprises, public administration, and individuals in order to achieve any economic, social culture, political, and personal goals and success. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to warmly welcome the honorable guest, namely Treasurer of the City of Katowice, Danuta Kamińska, on behalf of Mayor of Katowice, Dr. Marcin Krupa, His Magnificence Rector of the University of Economics in Katowice, Professor Leszek Żabiński, Vice Rector of the University of Economics in Katowice, Professor Sławomir Smyczek, Dean of Faculty, my Faculty of Finance and Insurance of the University of Economics in Katowice, Professor Andrzej Piosik. And distinguished keynote speakers, Vice Rector of the University of Warsaw, Professor Alojzy Nowak. Oh, he is probably under the way, yes. And Head of Chair of Management Information System from the University of Warsaw, Professor Witold Chmielarz. Ladies and gentlemen, this conference would not be possible without the dedication and investment of many individuals and organizations. These are University of Economics in Katowice that hosts this conference here in Katowice, the Middle Georgia State from the USA, the International Association for Computer Information Systems from the USA, and the Higher Education Technical School of Professional Studies in Novi Sad from Serbia, and International Institute for Applied Knowledge Management. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together to thank the following. Conference animator and originator, Professor Alex Kuchan from the Middle Georgia State. The team of editors from the USA. Conference program chair, Professor Nica Geri from the Open University of Israel. Conference arrangement directors, Dr. Bożo Nikolic and Professor Liliana Ružić-Dimitrijević. Oh, Liliana is absent. And from the Higher Education Technical School of Professional Studies in Novi Sad. And all of you distinguished delegates of the world from Canada, Georgia, Bulgaria, Serbia, Slovenia, South Africa, Philippines, Russia, State of Israel, the United States of America, and Poland. without whom this conference would never take place. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the members of the Polish organizing committee of this conference who work with me on this conference and who will help all you with everything. Monika Eisenbart, Barbara Bryl, Anna Sołtysik-Pierunkiewicz, Katarzyna Śmietana, Tomasz Papaj and Rafał Żelazny. Distinguished delegates and ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask His Magnificence Rector of the University of Economics in Katowice to officially commence our conference. I warmly welcome Professor Alojzy Nowak from the University of Warsaw, Vice Rector of the University of Warsaw. His Magnificence Rector.
Thank you very much. Dear professors, dear participants of the doctoral consortium of the conference, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great honor and pleasure to warmly welcome you on behalf of the authorities of our university and myself at the opening ceremony of the International Conference Knowledge Management 2015, held by Institute of Business Information Systems, headed by Professor Ewa Ziemba, PhD and Conference Chair. The International Institute for Applied Knowledge Management, led by President Professor Alex Cohen from Middle Georgia State College, USA. Higher Education Technical School of Professional Studies, Novi Sad, Serbia, and Professor Nitsa Geri, Knowledge Management Conference Program Chair from the Open University of Israel. I would like to welcome them and thank them for the organizing and sponsoring of this international conference, so very important for the theory, praxis, and education connected with the knowledge management and the new economy. We are very proud to host you at our university, one of the oldest academic institutions in the Upper Silesia, established in 1937, before the Second World War, in this modern building, dedicated to new information technologies and knowledge management put into use a year ago. We are very satisfied to host you at our university, where the computer science and knowledge management scientific discipline is developed at our three faculties: the Faculty of Finance and Insurance, Faculty of Economics, and first of all, at the Faculty of Computer Science and Communication. I would like to cordially welcome the distinguished person, the treasurer of Katowice City, Mrs. Danuta Kamińska, on behalf of Mayor of Katowice, Dr. Marcin Krupa. I am very indebted to Dr. Krupa for his kind acceptance of this honorary patronage and his support. Professor Alojzy Nowak, PhD, the Vice Rector for Research and Liaison of the University of Warsaw, the biggest university in Poland, who agreed to to be keynote lecturer. Especially, I thank you for his fascinating prepared presentation about Eurozone. Yes, I would like to welcome all distinguished members of the program committee from American, Australian, Korean, Canadian, Serbian, Slovenian, and Polish university. Thank you for your kind acceptance for the invitation to be member of the committee and for your hard work. I welcome all students and professors who participate in this conference. Last but not least, I would like to congratulate the organizers on the choice of the very interesting topics and sessions. I think the results of our discussions and the debates will support the building programs on new restructuring of economy in the Upper Silesia and the best choice of intelligent future economic specialization of our region. So, I wish all the participants of this conference not only great professional satisfaction, but also unforgettable experiences from the stay of our university and from the planned visit to our Center of Culture and Music in Katowice, and visit to Krakow, the greatest tourist attraction of Poland. I declare the conference open.
Support. Distinguished delegates, may I now invite Treasurer of the City of Katowice, Danuta Kamińska, to address our conference.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Marcina Krupy oraz własnym pragnę Was bardzo gorąco, serdecznie powitać się w naszym pięknym mieście.
on behalf of Mayor of Katowice City, Marcin Krupa, and my own behalf, I would like to warmly welcome all the participants at the conference in our beautiful city.
Jest mi niezmiernie miło, że możemy gościć tak znamienitych gości. Mam nadzieję, że wczoraj mieliście Państwo choć trochę czas po to, żeby zobaczyć miasto, żeby dowiedzieć się, jak wielką transformację przeszło nasze miasto w ostatnich latach.
We are very pleased that we can host such distinguished guests. I hope that yesterday you had some time to explore Katowice and learn about our city's tremendous transformation in recent years.
Miasto Katowice w przeszłości budowane było na węglu. Obecnie staramy się, żeby było budowane na wiedzy. Dlatego tym bardziej się czuję zaszczycona, że mogę w tych gościnnych progach naszej uczelni, mojej uczelni, jestem absolwentką, powitać wszystkich uczestników tej konferencji.
In the past, the city of Katowice was built on coal. And today, we are trying to build it on knowledge. Therefore, the more I feel honored that I can welcome you in our great, hospitable university, my university. I am an alumni at the Conference on Knowledge Management.
Wielkie podziękowanie dla organizatorów, panie rektorze, panie dziekanie, pani profesor, panie i panowie, za to, że podjęliście się właśnie na tej konferencji tego tematu, zarządzanie wiedzą.
Special thanks and congratulations to the organizers, Mr. Rector, Mr. Dean, Mrs. Professor, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you that you have taken up such an important subject, knowledge management.
Wiedza to najważniejsze dobro, największe dobro każdej instytucji, każdego podmiotu, każdego miasta, każdego z nas. Umiejętne i konsekwentne gromadzenie, łączenie, wykorzystywanie, rozwijanie, dzielenie się i zarządzanie wiedzą jest przepustką do sukcesu. Wzrost sprzedaży, rozwój pracowników, orientacja na kluczowe kompetencje pracowników to niektóre elementy wynikające z wdrożenia systemu zarządzania wiedzą.
Knowledge is the most important asset of every organization, every company, every municipality, every city, and as well of each of us. Skillful and consistent gathering, pooling, utilizing, developing, sharing, and managing knowledge is a ticket to success. The increase in sales, employee development, focus on core competencies of employees are just some of the elements resulting from the implementation of knowledge management systems.
Efektywne zarządzanie wiedzą to gwarancja wzrostu sprzedaży, wzrostu konkurencyjności, wzrostu innowacyjności i kreatywności, nieustannego rozwoju i uaktualnienia know-how czy standaryzacja dokumentów i procedur.
Effective knowledge management is a guarantee of increased efficiency of undertaken actions, increase in competitiveness, growth of innovation and creativity, constant development and updating of know-how or standardization of documents and procedures.
Wiedza to energia naszych czasów. Osobiście pragnę, by zarządzanie wiedzą stało się wartością, było DNA, kodem naszych instytucji, naszych firm, naszych miast, bo w dzisiejszych czasach tylko to zwiększa konkurencyjność i możliwości rozwoju.
Knowledge is the energy of our times. Personally, I wish knowledge management became a value of its own. It was in the DNA, in the code of our institutions, our businesses, our cities, because nowadays only it can increase our competitiveness and development opportunities.
Z punktu widzenia miasta chodzi również to, żeby dać możliwość łączenia się światów, nauki, biznesu i władzy. Bo czymże władza byłaby bez wiedzy, biznes bez wiedzy i wiedza bez praktyki. Dlatego działania oparte na symbiozie tych światów, działania oparte na wiedzy z wykorzystaniem wszystkich dostępnych narzędzi, w szczególności zaś wspomagane możliwościami IT, mają przyszłość.
From the standpoint of the city, it is about creating conditions for the merger of the realms of science, business and politics. And what precisely is power without the knowledge, business without the knowledge, or science without practical application? That is why actions based on these realms symbioses knowledge-based activities utilizing all available tools, and in particular the possibilities offered by IT have a future.
Przeglądając program konferencji, jestem pod wielkim wrażeniem ilości zagadnień, tematów, problemów, które będą tu poruszane. I aż żal mi, że będę musiała Państwa opuścić, bo za co bardzo przepraszam, bo dzisiaj niestety, ale mamy jedną z najważniejszych z 2 sesji w roku absolutorium dla władz miasta. Wierzę jednak, że będą dostępne materiały pokonferencyjne, które będą mogły nas dodatkowo inspirować, wzbogacać naszą wiedzę, byśmy mogli wprowadzać w życie najlepsze rozwiązania, by zwiększać efektywność, oszczędność zasobów i rozwijać się.
Looking through the conference program, I'm very impressed with the number of topics, subjects, issues and problems that will be discussed here, and I regret that I have to leave early, for which I do apologize. But my duties are calling. Today we have the vote of approval session of the Katowice City Council, on which I must be present. This is one of the 2 most important sessions of the year. However, I believe that available post-conference materials will further inspire us and enrich our knowledge so that we can implement the best solutions to increase efficiency, save resources and develop ourselves.
Życzę Państwu wspaniałych wrażeń z tej konferencji, dodatkowych inspiracji, jakie zawsze daje poznanie różnych punktów widzenia. I oczywiście zapraszam do zwiedzenia miasta i powrotu do naszych kochanych Katowic.
I wish you wonderful impressions from the conference, additional inspiration which always comes from getting to know different points of view. And of course, I invite you to visit Katowice and return to our beloved city.
Dziękuję bardzo i dziękuję bardzo Pani.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Kamińska, for your and Mayor of Katowice address. Professor Andrzej Piosik, Dean of Faculty of Finance and Insurance, may I invite you to take a floor.
It is a great pleasure and honor for me to greet you at the International Conference in Knowledge Management. I do it especially on behalf of authorities of the Faculty of Finance, also on behalf of Professor Marcinek, Dean, Vice Dean of the Faculty. This conference is of great importance for our faculty for many reasons. for many important reasons. One of the reason is that is linked with a very strong international orientation of our faculty, with many international programs, including also joint master programs. So I hope that this conference will enable us to develop the cooperative, collaborative network between our institutions for the following years. This conference is also very important because of the research orientation of our faculty. It includes both the drivers of the performance of organizations, both in business and in public sector. We all know that it would be difficult to analyze this issue without intellectual capital, without strengthening the knowledge management and implementing its methods in the management of organizations. So it is very close to our core research interest. And the next is integrated, the issue of integrated information system, including especially accounting, but not only, which is developed at our faculty. So thank you very much that you came to Katowice, that you invited that you accepted the invitation, and I wish you inspiring and fruitful, resultful discussion. And I also have a wish for us that we would like you to return to Katowice for possible, I hope, following editions of this conference. Thank you, of course, the organizers that decided to place this conference in our university. Thank you very, very much, and we wish you a successful conference.
Thank you, Professor Andrzej Piosik, especially for financial support for our conference. At the end, I would like to wish all of us very interesting, many interesting and fascinating discussion. Now I would like to ask Alex to take over the opening session. On this picture, Alex is with Vice Rector of our university, Sławomir Smyczek, after the signature of the agreement on collaboration between our universities. This agreement was signed next year in June, after KM conference in Bulgaria. Yes?
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite Program Chair Nitsa Jerry to say a few words.
Okay. Dear friends, applied knowledge management is a major force in enabling worldwide prosperity. The purpose of the Knowledge Management Conference is to bring together researchers and practitioners and promote the multi as well as interdisciplinary field of applied knowledge management. This year, we received very interesting papers covering diverse important aspects of knowledge management, such as organizational and interorganizational knowledge management, usability aspects, consumers, suppliers and prosumers, global and cross-cultural aspects of knowledge sharing, searching knowledge, security and privacy aspects, risks and challenges of knowledge management, innovative educational knowledge management approaches, and women's empowerment and social technologies. I would like to thank all the authors for sharing their knowledge and wisdom with us. On behalf of all of us, I would like to thank the reviewers for their thorough work and constructive comments, which were very helpful. It was wonderful to see how the papers were improved during the revision stage. Many of you were involved in creating this really unique conference, and I will not mention names, but there are 4 people that I must thank for their special efforts. Many thanks to Eva Zemba, our conference chair, for organizing this conference and for her support and help. Special thanks to Božo Nikolic and Liliana Ružić-Dimitrijević, the organizers of the first Knowledgement Conference in Novi Sad, Serbia, for their work in arranging this conference. Finally, a heartfelt thank you to Alex Crank for leading this important initiative for the 3rd time already, and for his tremendous contribution to all aspects of the program, and for his friendship. May we all have a fruitful conference and a great time together. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it. I guess you all have said everything that you needed to say. Again, thank you for hosting us here. Just a couple of things. The coffee break will be 1 level down, level 4. And 1 change in the schedule, that is the award ceremony is going to be today during the lunch, and it's going to be on the 2nd floor. All right, now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker, Professor Alojz Novak. Professor Novak is Vice Rector for Research and Liaison at University of Warsaw. As a professor in economics and a distinguished scholar, he has published and presented numerous papers in the area of banking, international economics, risk management in financial markets and capital markets, macro and microeconomics, and economic analysis of EU. Please join me in welcoming Professor Novak, our keynote speaker.
Probably it's better for you to go downstairs, but if you want to, dziękuję, wystarczy. Good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And I will try to do the best to answer the question, what is going within the European Union. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I am today without Professor PowerPoint. I am using or cooperating very seldom with Professor PowerPoint, so the pen is needed here. There are 2 reasons. I am too lazy to prepare presentations. And reason number 1, as you know, in Harvard, for example, it's forbidden to use PowerPoint. And I have been teaching for many years at Cambridge University, and the only reason, I suppose, they invite me to teach at Cambridge is that I am coming without Professor PowerPoint, despite of my bad English and bad accent and everything. But anyway, so feel free, interrupt me anytime you wish. If you want to ask the questions, please ask the questions. And by the way, we have just now 2 Nobel Prize winners in Warsaw. Maybe they will come today or tomorrow to Katowice. And I have been also discussing and analyzing what is going on within European Union. Professor Prescott is one of them, and I have forgotten the another name. However, I should remember, from California, University of California, Berkeley. And we had a meeting yesterday at the Central Bank, so maybe if there is some time, I will indicate what Professor Prescott and another Nobel Prize winner are talking or thinking about the European Union. So do I have 45 minutes or 50 minutes? Okay. So just now let's start, because we have some friends, colleagues also from outside European Union. So maybe I will be not going into history, but I will show you where we are. And when we talk about the European Union, what is, by at least Polish standards, or by this part of the world, European Union. So we have here free trade area, which is just now between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Then we have customs union, Then we have, I will be defining all those things. Generally speaking, free trade area is an agreement between two or more countries in the result of what they decided to remove all trade obstacles. But they have been individually running customs policy against the third body. And here, customs union is the same, but the difference is that they have common customs policy against the third body. And here we have common market. Common market basically is based on so-called four freedoms: free movement of goods, free movement of services, free movement of capital, and free movement of labor. And then we have monetary union. And monetary union is an agreement between two or more countries in what they decided, except having four freedoms, to implement and to run common monetary policy. And for the common monetary policy is responsible common central bank, in this case European Central Bank, which has been using or should use the ordinary monetary tools like interest rate, mandatory reserves, exchange rate, and of course supply of money. And sometimes there is discussed that the last step of integration will be political union. So probably the chance, at least in the next 20, 30 years, to implement political union within Europe is impossible. However, we have been discussing. But when we look at the world, so we see here mostly the United States of America, the United States of Mexico, Switzerland, etc. So in some of those countries, they have been using the same culture and the same language, but in some, they speak different languages. Canada is also this good example, and Switzerland. And when I sometimes teach American students and I'm asking for how long English is used or what language was the competitor, mostly they indicate that 100 years when Senate voted, they say, some say French, some say Spanish, but of course, as you know, it was German. Only by one voice, English won with the German language. So when we talk about the European Union, where are we? We are here somewhere and here. So this is today European Union with some political integration. So we have here in monetary union 18 countries, and we have here 10 countries. And Poland is among those in common market countries. So this is first not extremely good sign, because European Union is not only about peaceful development, in particular about peaceful development, not economic, frankly, development. However, today we have been looking at the European Union mostly from economic and financial perspective, and we criticize because it doesn't work very well, etc. Probably it's true. But the European Union is also about the sustainable development. So when we have two levels of development, so with sustainability is a problem. But there is a bigger problem, because among those 18 countries, we have also two groups. So we can say that countries within the monetary union have been by definition developing faster, or should be developing faster. And in common market, they have been developing by definition. However, it is not always true, a little bit slower. And here, within the 18 countries, we have again two groups. One group is so-called core countries, mostly Western and Northern countries. And another group are so-called peripheral countries. Sometimes we call them peaks. Peaks, it doesn't sound good in Polish, but probably in English either. So it's Portugal, Ireland, Greece, and Spain. And ironically, sometimes among those countries is added, ironically, one of the G7 countries, Italy. So why they are being put here? Because they have, all of those countries have some problems. The biggest problem for those countries is that they have a huge debt, both budgetary debt and public debt. And the debt here among all those countries is estimated at approximately $3 trillion of US dollars. So it's quite huge. I will be discussing a little bit later about that, but this is the biggest problem for those countries as well. But the question is, what happened? Why some countries have been doing, so-called core countries, have been doing well, and the another group is doing bad? You mostly heard today about Greece, but Greece is not the only problem, or Greeks are not the only problem. We have been talking about Greece because of maturity of credits. But in probably 2-3 years, the other problems can appear also in other countries because the credits they have been taken or they had been taken will be mature in 3, 4, 5 years. So if the situation is not changed, the real problems are ahead of us, and the real problems can here appear. But just now, I wanted to only explain what happened, because mostly we criticize those countries saying that they were bad, they were taking credits, they were over-credit, etc. But the problem is that someone was willing to give them the credits. So we have two sides of the same problem. And I will try in a minute to explain what happened and why the others were willing to lend the credits. But number one, to build a little bit broader picture. So the question is, for what reason European Monetary Union was established, created, implemented, whatever. There were 3, maybe 4 reasons, and you will judge whether they were economic reasons or political or social reasons. But to explain the political reasons, I say only 3 sentences for what reason European Union was established. Nowadays, we think for economic reasons, for financial reasons, what is not true. European Union was established, number one. It's always nice when I'm talking and if there are German students in the room, because reason number one was to civilize Germany. What does it mean to civilize Germany? I mean, Germany we want or we don't want became, after the Second World War, no time just now explain why. If someone has a question, I will explain. After 10 years, after the Second World War, was the strongest economic power here in Europe. At that time, it was measured by production steel and coal. And steel and coal could be used not only for production of energy, but also to build tanks and aircrafts. And as you know, Germany lost approximately 1/3 of its territory in the result of the Second World War. So Europeans, Benelux countries, Brits, and others afraid that one day Germany will be interested in coming back, in getting back Silesia, Prussia, and other places. So they said that we have to control Germany. How to control? We have to establish an organization of the countries producing coal and steel. Not to increase production of coal and steel, but just to control, to decrease the production of coal and steel. Is there economic reason? To some extent, but rather political and military reason. Reason number one, the countries of Europe afraid at that time very much of Soviet Union, of communism. And communism was going from the east to the west. So they thought, we establish strong economic organization, then we will create military power, police forces, army forces, and we will be fighting eventually against the communists. And reason number 3, Europe was trying to compete against the United States. Europe lost the power America was winning in terms of competition, and Europeans were thinking that once we have such strong organization, we'll be competing against the United States. So they established an organization of countries producing coal and steel, which was changed, renamed in 1957 for European Union organization. The name was different. And time was passing. Everything was fine, was developing. Better, worse, European Union existed. But parallelly, it has been developing so-called globalization. European Union was about free trade, free movement of goods, services, etc. And globalization was based on so-called Washington Consensus, and Washington Consensus was based on three main pillars from economic perspective. What were the pillars? Liberalization, deregulation, and privatization. And the people within the European Union, they were thinking in this way. We have a parallel organization. We don't need to pay to belong to this organization or to this process. Nothing, zero. And here, once we are within European Union, we have to pay 1% of our GDP. So what is the reason to pay money for the organization we don't need? Because we can belong to the process of globalization. So in many places it was said, we don't want to have European Union. We want European Union to disappear because of the stupid bureaucrats, because of stupid requirements, because of regulations, because of centralization, etc., etc. And additionally, in 80s in particular, all three reasons for what European Union was established disappeared. Germany was, let's say, civilized, communist system collapsed, and Europe lost the competition against the United States. So they said, no more, no longer, we don't want to have European Union. And ironically, another group of countries, among them Poland, wanted to join European Union. They didn't want to have European Union, and we wanted to join European Union. And fortunately for us, many bureaucrats, and not only bureaucrats, but also people who survived Second World War, started to discuss this problem. What is going on? Do we really want European Union to disappear, or we want European Union to survive? And they said, I don't remember exactly whom the French or the Germans, older people who survived Second World War, said, and they were discussing at the universities, mass media, etc. Look, hey, European Union is not about economic development. European Union is not about financial development. European Union is about peaceful development. If you want to have peaceful development, if you don't want people kill each other for everything, for any reason, we have to support this organization. We have to pay for the organization. But they were asking questions: how to survive? What should be done to survive and to keep in life European Union? And they started to discuss, and they returned to the paper published by whom we call just now Father of Euro, Robert Mundell, Nobel Prize winner of 1999. He wrote a paper on optimal currency areas, where he explained what should be done to establish an organization between countries, a monetary organization between countries which differ very much, economically, financially, politically, culturally, etc., etc. I wanted only to say that when the paper was published in the States, Robert Mundell was called at that time Crazy Bob. Everybody was joking about him, that it was an illusion. For many years, many great American professors, Nobel Prize winners like Franco Modigliani, like Milton Friedman, like Rudiger Dornbusch of MIT, German origin American economists, they were writing papers about Euro fantasies. Nobody frankly believed. And suddenly, for some reasons, what reasons? Just to support the existence of European Union, appeared the chance that Euro could be implemented. The name of the currency was different, that common money could be implemented. For what reason? Just to maintain life or to hope to survive of the European Union. So we can say that Euro, one of the reasons for implementation of the Euro, of monetary union, was to deeper or to make deeper the process of the integration within the European Union. But it was not the another reason. Look what happened at the time. I am talking just now about late 80s and 90s. What was going on in Asia? We have been observing so-called huge financial crisis. What does mean financial crisis? Financial crisis, generally speaking, means that money, that businesses, households, firms, and other institutions are escaping of maintaining financial assets in certain money which was recognized as international money. What was the international money? Today is also, however, with weaker position, US dollar. Approximately 80% of the foreign assets were held in US dollars. They are people from 2 or 3 universities from the East Coast, as I remember, Yale, Princeton, and Harvard, or maybe Chicago, which is in the Midwest, of course. So they calculate, or they were calculating, and I think they calculate all the time, how much money is on American soil if you assume that 100% was ever created or was ever printed. Do you know how much? Something between 5 and 7%. And the rest is outside of the United States. So this is a huge problem in such situation if we deal with situation that US dollars from outside are coming back to America. When Robert Mundell was giving a lecture at Warsaw University, one of the female students asked him a question. Professor Mundell, if you were asked to indicate the worst economic event ever happened in 20th century, what would you say? You know what he said? I mean that the worst, what happened in 20th century was creation of Fed, Federal Reserve System, the central bank of the United States. Why? He explained that Fed is one of the biggest, or is the biggest vehicle producing inflation, not within the United States, but outside the United States. Of course, nowadays we have been dealing with deflation. We can explain how it can happen that we are dealing with deflation. There is no good answer probably, but we can discuss. Why? Because US dollars were outside the United States. So Europe, which was strong economically at that time, how do we measure strong or not strong? By GDP. In Europe, GDP was almost the same like in the US. Per capita, of course, lower because there are fewer Americans and more Europeans. So once you divide the same amount of money, it's lower. But financially, Europe was such small and America was such big. So Europeans said at that time that we have to do something. One reason for implementation common currency is to deepen the process of integration, and number 2 is important also to help to stabilize the financial system of the world. So to deliver to the world second international currency. So just once one group of people or businesses will be escaping of US dollar, they will be investing in euro. And we will deal with some kind of stabilization. If this financial system is based only on one pillar, it's bad. It's not too good. The best would be to have 3 pillars, of course, and we have been still looking. We I mean Americans and Europeans, for the third body. And the third body should be China, but for some reasons China cannot be, at least not yet. I will be talking a little bit about China later. So this was external, another reason for implementation Euro. But there were some also so-called smaller reasons. What were the smaller reasons? Well, Germany, again. It is an interesting country in Europe, there is no doubt about that. So Germany, in 80s and 90s, became again superpower here in the region. And not in the region. It is worth to remember that not America and not Japan had the first place in international trade, but Germany. But societies or businesses are usually divided in two groups. One is so-called financial perspective, and another is real economic perspective. And they had the Germans, extremely strong Deutsche Bundesbank, the central bank, with extremely strong person as a head, Dr. Tittmeyer. Once president of Germany or Bundeskanzler wanted to see Dr. Tittmeyer, the president of Deutsche Bank, never went from Frankfurt to Bonn, always president or Bundeskanzler, if they wanted to see him, went from Bonn to Frankfurt. And the Deutsche Bundesbank said that strong currency, low inflation, this is the most important, or they are the most important things for German economy. And on the other side, it was unification of Germany, and 1/3 of the territory was not efficient, not at all. They had problems with production, they didn't know how to produce, and the Deutsche market at that time was too expensive and was too strong to be compete on German, European, or international market. So the only chance to survive east part of Germany was to weaker German currency. And Deutsche Bundesbank, along with its presidents, they were not willing to do that. And on the other side, it was government, trade unions, and businesses which wanted to have weaker currency in order to be more active and more competitive on the market. And they were quarreling. 3 times or even 4 times they attempt to discuss, to have a referendum within Germany, and the society was against of introduction euro. But finally, after 3 years, society voted in favor, because otherwise Germany, or at least east part of Germany, would be in difficult situation. So this was the third reason for implementation euro. Here, I can say, I'm from Warsaw, so in Katowice maybe you cannot say, was partly also to finance Germany, was implemented because of weaker currency in comparison with German mark, with Deutsche mark. And there were 4th reason, the relationships between France and Germany. France felt not satisfied because of strong position of Germany. So the French thought that once we have common currency, will be maybe French president of European Central Bank, at least on the board, and France will have some influence on what is going on from financial perspective. Anyway, taking into account what I said, it was agreed. Euro will be implemented. After many turbulences, many years, it was the discussion taking place. But of course, what I am saying to you, ladies and gentlemen, the politicians could not say to the nations. They were looking, of course, for economic reasons, to explain that there are some hard economic reasons and the euro must be implemented. What are the reasons? When we agree that we all were here, all the Europeans were here in common market, so that meant that the business was developing very fast. They were trading. So once the Germans wanted to buy something in France, They had to exchange Deutschmark into French franc. If the French wanted to buy something in Britain or somewhere, they had to exchange, etc. And as you know, in the business, in the financial world, two prices exist. When you are buying currency, you are paying more. When you are selling, you are getting less. And in literature, the cost is called, or the costs are called transactional costs. So the economists and the politicians ask the questions. Do you want, nations, do you want to develop foreign trade? Yes, we do. Do you want to have lower transactional costs? Yes, we do. So we have to have common currency. Reason number one. And then we will be using this money, for universities, for research, etc. Did they use? This is the different story. But at least they were saying in this way. The another economic reason was to lower the cost of hedging because of speculations on money markets. So if you want to avoid speculations, you have to hedge. If you want to hedge, you have to pay. So the business, international business, is too costly. So we should have one common currency. And the third reason was so-called law of one price for one good. And they were giving the example of German car, Audi. For Audi, people used to pay, or they had to pay, in Hamburg, $50,000, and in Copenhagen, $30,000, or 30,000 Deutschmark. So they asked the question, what is the reason for this same product, two different prices? If we want to pay one price for one good, we have to have comparable prices. It must be visible, so one currency is the best solution. Decision made. But the economists, of course, they were clever in this sense that they said that it's not enough that society decided for implementation single currency, for creation monetary union, because they knew that the differences between the countries were huge in terms of many economic factors. So they said, they gathered in the city which is called Maastricht. They were looking at American economy, they were looking at European economy, and they said, if we want really to be successful with implementation of euro, the countries which are going to join European Monetary Union have to fulfill certain criteria. What criteria? 3 monetary criteria and 2 fiscal criteria. They are called Maastricht criteria. What are the fiscal criteria? Monetary criteria. Number 1, if you want to join European Monetary Union, we have to have stable economy. And stability at that time was measured by what? Low rate of inflation. So they said, we have to look what is the lowest inflation in the countries with stable economy, and that time it was, as I remember, France, Austria, and Denmark. Then we have to calculate arithmetic average, and it was, as I remember, in Austria 1% rate of inflation, in France 1.2, and Denmark 0.8. So they add 1.1 plus 1.2 plus 0.8 equals 3 divided by 3. 1% is the required level of inflation. But they said it will be very difficult for another countries to fulfill such criteria. So they said plus 1.5 percentage points. So the reference rate was 2.5 percentage points. Then they said interest rates must be low. 3 countries with lowest inflation, we see what they have, the interest rates plus 2 percentage points. And then pretty stable or fixed exchange rate, plus minus at the beginning 12.25, plus minus, and the end 2.25 plus minus. At the beginning, only 5 or 6 countries could fulfill the criteria. And 2 fiscal criteria. budgetary deficit not higher than 3% of GDP, and public debt not higher than 60% of GDP. And as you know, in Europe, Europe is not a monolith. We have Northern and Western Europe, where countries had more or less stabilized economies. And we have also the so-called PIGS countries, where the inflation rate used to be 13, 15%, and the interest rate usually 18, 20%. So it was a huge problem, because some of those countries who wanted to be within monetary union, they fulfilled the criteria immediately, and some countries had to fight. And they were fighting to fulfill the criteria, because they wanted to join European Monetary Union very much. Why? Because they were thinking that once, at that time, England was also planning to be a member of European Monetary Union, so they said, once we are together with Germany, France, England, and some Benelux countries, the Netherlands, and others, everybody in the world, in America, in Asia, will be looking at us and will come with investment, with money. So we have to be, by definition, in the club of gentlemen. Now we know that it was club of the cheaters, but this is a different story. At that time, they were thinking that it would be club of gentlemen. So they started to fulfill the criteria. It was not easy, and they were cheating to some extent. As you know, from the accounting perspective at that time, we were not dealing with so-called international accounting standards. So everybody was doing what wanted to do. So, and as you know exactly, that certain positions of the cost, of the today's cost, you can count as a future cost, and some future income you can calculate as present income. So they were doing, Greeks in particular, but not only Greeks. Anyway, finally, they fulfilled the criteria after fighting of 4 or 5 years, cutting expenditures, in particular in public sector for wages, but also spendings on the universities, on hospitals, on roads, etc. So they were really suffering. And one day, they fulfilled the criteria, and they said at the end of 1998, we are in heaven. Because January 1st, 1999, instead of paying 18% for money for credit, they were obliged to pay 4%. So they said, we are in heaven. We are taking money just now. Who we? Businesses, households, banks, and governments. But of course, businesses and households from Greece, from Portugal, from Spain, didn't go to Hamburg, didn't go to Frankfurt or to Paris. Their banks went. And their banks were borrowing money in Frankfurt, in Amsterdam, in other places, bringing that money back home, and from them, the money were borrowing businesses and households paying, let's say, 1% or 2% more. So the banks were borrowing at 3%, and they were lending at 4% or 5%. So everybody was happy with comparison what was 2 days or 3 days earlier. And the government started borrowing money. The governments needed money for what? For building highways, airports, schools, universities, hospitals, etc. How did they borrow money? They were issuing treasury bonds or obligations. At that time, everybody was buying. Everybody means the banks were buying, private banks or commercial banks were buying, because at that time, nobody was thinking about the even possibility of collapse of the state. Remember that state was, at that time, sure institutions with no possibility to collapse. So everybody was happy to borrow, and everybody was happy to lend. Why to lend? Well, we are coming to very delicate, I would say, issue. Again, Europe is not a monolith, and in Europe we have in certain places at least two philosophies of life and of work. When you look at the northern and western countries, what is the philosophy? First, work, then save, then invest, then eventually enjoy your life. There is no place for borrowing money. And you have another southern world. What is the philosophy of life? First, enjoy life, then eventually work, then eventually save, then eventually invest. And all two philosophies came to the same point. And the lenders were thinking in this way. The banks in Germany, France, and in other countries. Finally, we have good clients, the best clients who are willing to borrow money from us. Because our main goal is what? Maximization of profit. So we have two possibilities to maximize the profit. Number one, to invest on American financial markets. They were investing on New York Stock Exchange. But they didn't want to invest all the money because they were not sure also about the American financial markets. So they were willing also to lend money here to the clients who or which actually were checked by whom? By European Commission or the agencies. Allowing them to join European Monetary Union meant at the time, you are good. You have a certificate that you fulfilled all the criteria. You are on European market. So you are Europeans. So borrow money. If you want to borrow money, borrow money. And they were borrowing. And believe or not, but the system worked. 2000, 2001, 2003, 2004, 2005. Everything worked perfectly. What else? The businesses from the PIGS countries were borrowing money, not only just to use them for consumption. They were also investing. Where they were investing, and you can check. They were investing in Warsaw. They were investing in Prague. They were invested in Vilnius. They were investing also in Latvia, etc. Why they were, and maybe in Katowice. However, I don't know very well Katowice. Why and in what they were investing? They were investing on real estate markets. Why? Because we were on the way to European Union, so the prices every year were going up 15, 20, 25%. So they were thinking positively in this way. We are borrowing money at 4% or 5%. We are investing in real estate where the prices are going up by 20, 25%. They will join European Union because the decision was made and joined in 2004. So then, once the prices rose 2, 3, or 4 times, we resell real estate, we get cash, we will repay credits, and we will be successful because additionally we will make some more money. And it's logical. Everything worked. But suddenly the crisis was important. The economy was collapsed. Prices collapsed. Businesses collapsed. And the time to repay credits came. They were not investing in what? In what you have been doing, new technologies, innovations, etc. So they did not develop good products. Additionally, the costs went up in many countries. Spain sometimes was extremely proud because of that. Because of thousands or at least hundreds of kilometers of new roads they built. And of course, roads are needed very much in any country. But the problem is that if you are not developing in the meantime new technologies, if you are not implementing innovations, and if you are increasing demand for what? For cement, for steel, and for the workers, the prices are going, building highways, the prices are going up in one sector, and then the prices are going up in another sector. You have no products, you are unable to compete on the market, so you have no money to repay the credits. So 3 billion, and just now we have been dealing with this situation. So what to do? What is the solution? There is no one good solution. There is no one solution. When you look at countries like Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain, what I remember is that per capita, the debt is estimated in all those countries something between 30 and 35,000 of euros. So it's huge, but it's not dramatically huge in this sense, and their GDP per capita is estimated something between 25 and 30,000. So if we assume that the average rate of savings in Europe is something between 5 and 6%, so if they save, let's assume that they have GDP per capita 30,000, if they save every year 1,500, so of course they cannot spend all the savings on repaying debt, so maybe 50%. So it would take them to repay the debt they have approximately, 35, 50 years. But the problem, a real problem, is also here in Ireland. In Ireland, I'm quoting this European Central Bank, the debt per capita is estimated at approximately 125,000 euros. So to repay, it will take the Irish people approximately something between 90 and 110 years. So the chance that they will repay is close to zero. So don't expect that this problem of debt is going to be solved in the near future. So what are the solutions? I will give you 5 scenarios, but unfortunately no one of them could be implemented. Scenario number 1. We know that they are borrowers, they are very much criticized, and we know what they should do. What should they do in short time? In particular, they should cut immediately the expenditures. What kind of expenditures? Number 1, or we can say cut expenditures and increase income. What kind of expenditures? In particular, expenditures on what? Education, research, healthcare, security, transportation, etc. And they have been trying to do. But there is a problem because additionally, we have no time to discuss so-called toxic assets. Because in many places, here in Europe, but in particular in the US, we have been dealing with so-called toxic assets in the financial institutions. So states in Europe and in America are also involved in helping businesses to survive, financial institutions to survive. So one time, states, governments are helping financial institutions to survive or businesses to survive. On the other side, they would be cutting the expenditures of so-called soft sector. So some people in some places, in particular young generation, also in Poland, is asking also a difficult question. If state is not helping us. Government is not helping us. So for what reason do we need government? Only just to be proud? It's too costly business. So maybe no government. I don't know. I'm just now joking a little bit about that. Anyway, coming back. So we are cutting the expenditures. And we are increasing what taxes in particular to increase the income. Greece is exactly trying to do that, extending also professional life from 60 up to 67, etc. And what? Well, you see what is going on. The Athens is burning. No success for the last 2 or 3 years. Do we have any positive experiences? Cutting expenditures and increasing income and to be successful? Yes, we do. Where? In so-called Baltic states. They had very similar situation 6-7 years ago. And they implemented very restrictive monetary and fiscal policy. And they were successful, they fulfilled criteria, enjoyed the European monetary union. So why them and why not the PIGS? Probably, maybe one of the reasons is that the PIGS countries are more democratic countries with longer lasting democracy. And they do not afraid governments, they do not afraid international pressure, etc., etc. The Baltic states were not such experienced in democracy, so once government said, you have to fulfill, they were fulfilling. Probably this is one of the explanation. But anyway, here we cannot do that. So another scenario number 2. If we agree that the fault of the present situation is on the both sides of the lenders and borrowers, and if we agree that we are unable to repay the debt, so maybe cutting the debt will be the best solution, 50%, because they are fault on the both sides. Maybe it will be the good solution, but as you know, the decision within the European Union is being made under the consensus base. So everybody, if does not agree, must not at least be against. And there are countries, and Poland is one of them, who is protesting, which says that we were clever, they were not clever, so let them pay. We were not lending and we were not borrowing. So we are not responsible for what is going on in European Union. So we say no. Not only Poland, but Poland as well. So nowadays, no solution. Scenario number 2 is not for implementation. So maybe scenario number 3, Argentinization of Europe. Argentinization means that sometimes it happened in Argentina, in Latin America. 13, 15 years ago, they dealt with similar situation. So, as you remember, hopefully, what did they do? They devaluated Argentinian peso against the US dollar. Because the biggest problem just now, what we have in euro is strong euro. In European zone is strong euro. So maybe devaluation would be helpful. But the problem is that there are some countries which are doing very well. Germany, France, Benelux countries. And they say, no, we disagree. Once they work harder, once they work wiser, they will be successful as well. You know this German description sometimes. Why the Greeks and Spanish and Portuguese should eat 3 times every day? They can eat every second day, having 1 meal, working harder instead of 6 hours 10 hours or 12 hours and they will be successful. To some extent it's joke, to some extent not nice joke, but it is said. It's some kind of justification that there is no place for devaluation. And in particular, Germany are very sensitive about money, about strong currency. But this is not the only reason. Remember, please, that euro was also implemented for stabilization of the world's financial system. So devaluation would mean that many businesses would escape of euro and they would invest in American dollar. So we would deal back with dollarization, and at least Europeans didn't want to deal with dollarization. I am not saying it's bad or good. I am just describing the situation. And just now, as you know, via dollar, we have been running approximately 50%, around 50% of all businesses. And via euro, around 38-40%. And the rest via other currencies. But not 80%, not 85%, like 20 years ago. So this is also argument which is strongly used not to devaluate euro, just to adjust to the situation, to the strong European currency. So maybe scenario number 4, resurrection of Europe, the birth of Europe. Resurrection means solidarity, means that once one country is in problem or has a problem and the another is doing well, the another which is doing well should help the first which is doing badly or not such good. So sometimes we have been dealing with discussion. What kind of discussion? We have been dealing with the discussion in result of what it is said. We can do that. We can implement, we can resurrect, we can rebirth under certain conditions. That the countries which are called PIGS countries will be controlling their budgets. But everybody knows that they will be not. That the populists are stronger than the conservatives in those countries. So it is said that maybe it would be worth to build something like IMF, International Monetary Funds for Europe, European whatever financial agency, which would be responsible for European countries' budget. So in other words, who is responsible for budget? Minister of Finance and Prime Minister. They are preparing the budget, then they go to the Parliament, and Parliament is voting. So it is said that it will be the same, that Minister of Finance is preparing, Prime Minister is accepting, Parliament is voting, and then the budget is coming back to the European financial agency, and young people or older people, they are checking and saying 20% higher expenditures we are cutting. But the question is, if we deal with such situation, for what reason do we need national parliaments? Only just to be proud? It's too costly issue. But tell someone in Europe, in most places, that national parliaments are not needed. People still and countries believe that they are fully independent and that they are running national policies. I hope and I believe that nobody of you believes in such ideas. Look at what happened in Italy with this guy Berlusconi when he was dancing, drinking and doing nice but strange things. The democracy could not remove him for years. And suddenly he did something bad for financial markets. And within 10 days, Berlusconi disappeared. This is the case, and this is the example who has the power nowadays. And again, I am not saying bad or good. There are maybe two governments which are more or less independent, maybe free. American, Chinese, maybe German, who knows? And that is all. So, but this scenario, not good. So maybe another scenario. Maybe the first budget is prepared by the European Agency of Finance, is accepted, and then go to the parliament. But let's assume that the populists won. So that the populists say the expenditures are 20% too low. We are increasing. Doesn't work. But there is probably something more important in this scenario except the technicalities. I mean, this is the answer for the question, what kind of Europe do we need? Do we need federal Europe or confederation? Do we need or do we want to have the United States of Europe, like the United States of America, with one central strong government? Or do we need confederation? Up to now, there is no answer. But those who are net payers, like the Germans, like Benelux countries, they are against the United States of Europe. Why? Because they say that America is a state of transfers, is an agency of transfers, and we don't want to have in Europe agency of transfers. As you know, American colleagues know better than me, but you have, in the US, we have the W tax system, so some money goes to the local states or to the states, and some money goes to DC. And once Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia maybe are doing badly, so the money from DC comes to support them, but this money comes from New York, New Hampshire, Indiana, whatever place. So Europeans, in particular richer countries, say, we disagree with such situation. We don't want to share our wealth. So Europe just now is not prepared. There are some discussions, but we don't know the direction, in what direction to go. So maybe scenario number 5, Chinization of Europe. Europe is suffering of lack of money. We have that. And as you know, China, in the result of the last 25, 30 years policy, has surplus in current account, estimated at approximately 4.5 trillion of US dollars. So the Chinese, or at least we joke with the Chinese colleagues, they say, what is the problem? You have debt, we have surplus, open the borders, we will buy the debt and problem is solved. However, the Chinese say, under certain conditions. What are the conditions? Number 1, they say, you have to recognize that China was and is a democratic country. Number 2, you have to remove all trade obstacles, in particular concerning trade of weapons, nanotechnologies, biotechnological products, etc. And number 3, you have to implement strong and deep structural reforms within the European Union. So as you see, almost impossible to fulfill all the requirements. So what is the way? What to do? What Poland should do? I don't want to consume too much your time, so in only a few sentences. There is no doubt that it was a good project, however too optimistic, in this sense that it was believed that if we have common currency, if we have only monetary union, central bank, using all the tools and having clear one goal, low rate of inflation, all countries, all businesses will adjust and we will be dealing with convergence. Nowadays, we know that our American colleagues were longer time than we Europeans more clever. And in the States had not only one goal, low rate of inflation. We have to have also other goals, like GDP growth and low rate of unemployment. And in America, as you know, there are two goals imposed by Fed: low inflation and the rate of unemployment or GDP growth. And of course, for GDP growth, is not responsible the central bank, but the government. So we have to have somehow, some kind of common fiscal policy as well. Maybe being run by independent countries, by national countries, but some kind of such policy we should have. We cannot impose one monetary policy for each country. Maybe some losing or quantity losing here in Europe is also needed for some countries. Because probably just now we understand better that there's no reason to have Germany in Greece or to have France in Ireland or in another place, in other places. It is almost impossible to do that. We have also discussion in Poland whether we should join European Monetary Union or we should not, or rather when should we join, because we have to join. And I will give you one example. I mean, this is the discussion also what exchange rate should a country like Poland have? Fixed exchange rate or flexible exchange rate? We are quarreling a little bit, me personally and my colleague with Marek Belka, who is the president of National Bank and who is a great economist. Marek is a little bit in favor of flexible exchange rate. And he has many followers. We are rather in favor of fixed exchange rate. Why? When you look at Poland, just to show you one example, this is the discussion. Poland, when you look at the so-called chain of production value, there are many chains. But the most important, and you know that better than me, is this one and this one. The first one and the last one. Here we have new technologies and innovations. And here we have distribution. When you look at Europe, and just now we are extremely pleased, I will tell you, here we see in particular two countries, Israel and the Netherlands, and also northern and western countries, which are followers, and Silicon Valley, of course. Here there are more countries. I am saying, knowing that you were introduced, because we have just extremely well Warsaw University cooperation with some Israeli universities on the base of the state of the nation of startups, the book which was written, etc. And we are very much interested, in particular, in developing this change. And Poland, up to now, is good here, in particular in Silesia, but not only in Silesia. So fixing cars, for example. You can survive, you can be good, but you will never achieve the top. So Poland is on the way. So we are very successful, it's true, for the last 25 years. In terms of GDP growth, in terms of low rate of inflation, in terms of developing universities, higher education, etc. But on the other side, we are on the good way to go to peripheral country. And unfortunately, monetary policy, if you have flexible exchange rate, is not helping to develop this and that. It's helping you to survive here. Because there is no strong pressure on you to be active in innovation, in development, in research, etc. Because always, if you feel bad, you have economic problem, you can a little bit depreciate your currency, and you will sell products which are not developed, but they are cheap. Always the pressure. So this is one of the main reasons that we think that we should accelerate our way to European Monetary Union. It's a danger way to some extent. This is probably safer way to go. But the question is always and will be asked, if you are within European Union, can you be a desert? Or desert? Or you always will be developing fast? So this is the same question. If you are Alabama or Louisiana, is this same what New York is, or New Hampshire or California, or not? And by the way, when it was said that you are from the middle University, Georgia. Middle, I always told about Mercer University, and this is a nice place. This is, but anyway, Macon, the heart of Georgia, and Mercer. So we think that just now it's time to join European Monetary Union and to deal with harder currency and to make more pressure on efficiency, economic efficiency, on research, on new technologies, innovations, etc., etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. We have coffee break in about 16 minutes or so. But could we have one question from the audience? Do you have any questions at all? Yes, please. But quick, though. Very, very quick. 2 minutes.
2 points. I want to raise a question or comments from one. You didn't really mention the issue of cash versus electronic economies. In some countries, and we see that, where the cash transactions is extremely high compared to electronic transactions, where you can track, you can tax, you can monitor more. That's one question, how it relates to the Eurozone. And the other question is, or comments, Russia wasn't really part of anything from what I heard. How do you think Russia is related or impacting? Of course, there is a large trade with Russia, right?
Questions are easy, but answers are not easy, you know. And I will say in this way, when you look, I mean, Poland is trying to come to the system with electronic money, but we still have a lot, I would say, or a huge amount of cash in circulation. It's lower than it used to be, let's say 15, 20 years ago, but still big. One of the reasons, as you know, is so-called shadow economy or the black economy. And as you probably know, in the case of Poland, it's calculated that approximately something between 20 and 25% we have been dealing with shadow economy. So which is not regulated, which is not registered, etc. So once you have such 1/4 of your GDP shadow economy, you have to have by definition cash, because otherwise one-fourth of the economy will die. So I would say in this way that knowing that there is no huge pressure on electronization, I would say, of money. Many people have been talking, in particular from the financial supervision and from the central bank and from other institutions. But frankly, because of that, no pressure. So I would say that we should be prepared, we should discuss, but we are still not like the countries in Western Europe, which are also part of European Union, where the shadow economy is sometimes estimated at around 5-7%. So in Russia, for sure they could not implement, because probably just now 50% is so-called shadow economy. And so there is good question. Recently I met, and from time to time I'm invited to Moscow State University to give some lectures, and we have discussions how much, because we have just now we have embargo, and the cooperation between European Union and Russia is not going extremely well, I will say. However, although we have official common policy also towards Russia, as you know, some countries are trying to not to obey the rules, and they are trading with Russia, because you cannot ignore Russia. Russia is suffering very much because of embargo, but a recent report also shows that Europe is suffering too. United Europe is losing, or has already lost, approximately 100 billion of US dollars. So it's a huge amount of money. Some trade has been developing because we go, or Europe, when I'm saying we, not only Poland, but also in other countries, via, for example, Belarus. So we are selling agriculture products to Belarus, and Belarus is reselling the products. And the Russians are closing the eyes because there is a need of the products. There is no production in Russia. The biggest Russian problem is that they produce almost nothing. So they have to import. They produce oil, of course, and gold oil, but these are resources, natural resources, so they depend very much on prices, international prices. But production almost does not exist. So they have to close to some extent the eyes on what is going on. I had a chance also to talk to Russian, let's say, financial people. They are very close, frankly, to government. They are very close to president, but they are also suffering very much because many of Western products, of Western programs were blocked. They cannot invest. Despite that they have money, they cannot use this money. Many institutions, many businesses are not very much interested in using Russian money because of eventual, I would say, negative results. So Russia is looking for some kind of going out of this situation. So Russia has, we know, started to cooperate stronger with former Soviet republics like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and others. But Russia has been also building the bridges with China and with India, with big countries, with big neighbors, we can say. So also for that reasons, it's interesting that China is not feeling, in my opinion at least, in such less comfortable situation like it felt, let's say, 6 months ago or 10 months ago. So maybe, you know, we have to look also from another perspective when we say, we means Americans and Europeans, that we will build the free trade area which will influence China to change the production and international and trade policy. Maybe, you know, we will be losing only time and our efforts, and China will not change because China just now has been cooperating strongly with Russia. But there is something positive in this sense that more and more Russian colleagues from university circles, from the business circles, are discussing all those problems. And I can imagine that they will make some kind of pressure on President Putin and the government to change a little bit this policy. However, on the other side, we are reading and we are hearing that 90% of the society, Russian society, is supporting the policy of President Putin. So I think also that we have to also recognize the Russians, despite that economically Russia is not extremely strong just now, but we have to recognize also the policy, you know, how to say, the Russian position, and I have forgotten, Witku, the word godność. I have forgotten the English word, but then I will tell. I will tell you that they are proud. Dignity, yes, dignity. We have to understand also Russian dignity. So it's not easy to make this business. But the worst thing is probably if they are enemies on the both sides. What I know, the finishing, is also that Russia was going to build similar integrative or similar integration of the region between Russia, Kazakhstan, and China. Are they going to be successful in that? I don't think so, that they will be successful. So,
thank you so very much.
Thank you.